Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Alex Komorowski. I'm with UAN Support, and I'll be presenting the UAN pre-year-end training. We want to cover some topics today that you're going to want to do before December rolls around, so that way you have a smooth year-end transition. It's great for new fiscal officers and a great reminder for our veterans. So let's get started. Here are some of the definitions we're going to cover today, and it's important to know that if you're not familiar with some of these words, you've got some catch-up training to do before you want to cover this material. We're going to talk about things like unencumbered, carryover, amended certificates, annual financial statements, a temporary mode, fiscal year, just to name a few. So if you're a newer fiscal officer and you're not as familiar with those terms as you should be at year end, then you're going to want to go to our website, which is uanlink.ohioauditor.gov, click on the training menu, then click on transition. The transition section is going to be broken down into three different phases. The first phase is a welcome video for new fiscal officers with handouts. The second phase is going to be some prerequisite training, and those videos are going to cover the 101, 102, and 103 series. And a lot of the definitions that we're going to cover in today's terms are going to be from that 103 series. So if you're not familiar with the names on the previous slide, you're going to want to check that out. Phase 3 gets a new fiscal officer into an introduction of UAN training software, and you get to see the software in use and how things work there. So, moving on, an important thing we want you to do is obviously avoid stumbling blocks. You want to always keep your UAN software current, so make sure you're getting the email or the CDs we send out to refresh your software and keep those downloaded and up to date. Your monthly bank recs should be completed at month end. You don't want to wait till the year is over to go back and start entering bank recs in January. If you reconcile monthly, you will have a much smoother year end. Another thing to keep in mind is your secondary checking and investment account balances should match their statements. We'll go into more detail on those later, but we're not talking about just the numbers you manually enter into the bank rec. You're going to want to pull reports from UAN to make sure the secondary checking and your investment account balances match their month-end statements. Otherwise, you're going to have to make some catch-up transactions to make those work out and find where you went wrong. Your payroll software should reflect accurate unpaid withholdings. What do we mean by that? If you go in to pay your withholdings under payroll, you don't want to see a withholding hanging out there from 2020 or some prior year that's already been taken care of and you know it shouldn't be out there anymore. If you do have something like that, give us a call at UAN Support and we can help you do an unpaid withholding clear to get rid of that. Right now, it's sitting out there as an encumbrance. You don't need those things to be floating around when you're trying to deal with the hectic chaos at year end. So if you have something that's paid and you know you took care of it on accounting or some way else, then you need to get those cleared out. You also don't want any unpaid payroll withholdings hanging out there because you're going to pick up late fees and penalties. So stay on top of your payroll withholding payments. We'd also recommend you clean up your purchase orders. Close any zero balance POs ahead of time. You could still duplicate a closed purchase order, so you don't lose that feature, and there's no benefit to having an open purchase order sitting out there with a $0 balance. It's just going to create a little more clutter, so if we can cut down on that, do it. Confirm that you can log into the Social Security website and have a BSO number. UAN can't help you with these things, but it is required for year end. So you're going to want to deal with Social Security as soon as possible if you do not have a BSO number or can't log into the Social Security website because you're going to need to upload those W-2s. It's time to start looking ahead. What can you get done at the end of the year that typically you can only get done in that small window between budgeting of year end of this year and before the new budgets go in? What things do you want to see change and what do you want to have take place in the coming year? So let's talk about a few of those topics. Do you want to add or remove accounts or funds for next year? Do you have some new projects coming up where you need new account codes and things like that? You're going to want to talk to local government services or give UAN Support a call on how to get those in your software and in your budgets? Do you have old accounts or funds that you no longer use and they're just taking up line items on the budget? They don't ever get funded and you don't really need them. Can you disable them? Can you remove them? What can you do? Now is a great time to start looking into those options. Let's also talk about what can you do projecting forward. You can create next year's pay schedule. Make yourself a calendar. When are your pay dates going to be? Lay everything out, biweekly, monthly, whatever you have, semi-monthly. Lay it all out, and then think about things ahead of time. Are you going to have meetings that land on a holiday? And if so, do those checks need to be signed at those meetings? And are you going to have to propose alternative meeting dates to your board to approve? Think about that ahead of time and have a smoother year coming up. Think about what did work well and what didn't work well this year. Try to make those changes for next year. Evaluate your leave benefit policies would be another example of something you could do. If you don't have anything written that currently exists or it's too vague, make a case right now for your board to put the policy in writing. So that could be leave such as sick, personal, holiday, etc. We also recommend you check the withholdings for rate changes coming in the new year. Do you have school taxes? Are those rates going to change depending on elections? You're going to want to check out the Ohio Department of Taxation site for those. Same with local taxes. Do you have to reach out to the individual agencies or are they going through RETA? How are those taxes changing next year? Another big one would be insurance rates. So speaking of the things everyone loves to do, bank reconciliations. We touched on these before, but basically we want your bank reconciliations up to date. At the end of every month, you have your opportunity to go through everything, clear up that month, and then know that you're going forward from a clean place, which is what you want to do. You should not be carrying over unidentified other adjusting factors going forward. So if you took over as fiscal officer and there's always been this other adjusting factor going on here, and you just put it in the bank rec every month, now's the time to stop. And you're going to need to research what that's from. And it could be from years ago or months ago. Hard to say. So it could be from anything. If you can't figure out the difference, then now would be the time to reach out to a visiting clerk to come in and help you get that squared away before you get to year end and all that stuff just starts really steamrolling. And then you wind up just carrying over this other adjusting factor on your bank rec that just seems to keep going forever. These things have to be researched and taken care of. There are genuine other adjusting factors, like if you close one month and there's a bank fee on there, and you've talked to the bank at the end of the month and they're going to waive that fee, but that part's not going to post into your bank statement for maybe a month or so. That would be where you use an other adjusting factor. But if you don't have a situation that's kind of self-correcting like that, then you shouldn't be using other adjusting factors on your month end. If you ever have a question about when to use an other adjusting factor or are you using the right ones, give UIN support a call. That's what we're here for. So now getting into the secondary checking and investments, your bank rec every month does not individually reconcile each account. What it does is it compares your entered statement balance to your month-end fund balances. So it's looking at the larger picture instead of, making sure the money's in each bucket correctly. So you're comparing really cash totals that you're entering from your statements to what's in UAN. It is not individually reconciling each account and each investment. That's something that you're going to want to do. Verify your secondary checking and investment account totals in UAN match the last bank statement balance. And if they don't, that's going to need your attention because it's going to mean you either missed an adjustment or you have something going on there. Maybe the money's just sitting in checking and it needs to be transferred into an investment or secondary checking, things like that. But if they're not accurately reflecting, you're going to want to get that cleared up sooner rather than later. Why put it off for year end when you already have 100 other things to do? To see those balances in UAN, apart from obviously what you type into your bank reconciliation, that's just something you manually enter, so that's not your UAN number. You'd want to go to Accounting, Reports and Statements, and then for checking account reports, you could run the secondary checking account ledger, and that'll give you your month-end total there. And for investment reports, you can run an investment detail. And if there's been no activity this year, then you're going to have to go back and check a prior year to see when the last activity was. And then you're going to have to see what was missed between then and now if your totals aren't matching up. So a couple things to look at on that. Unpaid prior year withholdings. If your entity has some unpaid prior year withholdings, it needs to be investigated. So like I brought up before, if you have some kind of OPRS payment that pops up every month and you just ignore it because you know it got paid back in 2020, that should be something you take care of. You don't want to leave that out there just indefinitely. So if you have something that's showing up as an unpaid prior withholding for a month, quarter, or a year, investigate it, determine if it needs to be taken care of or needs to be corrected in the system, and then we can help you take care of that if you give UAN support a call. If you find one that is unpaid and it's due, you want to pay that immediately because you're going to have some penalties and some late fees on there. So the sooner the better. You never really want to let withholdings kind of lie around. If you found them to be paid but not posted in UAN, your bank statement would be off that amount every month. So the bank would be showing that this amount left the bank, but UAN would not show that amount coming out. So your UAN balance would be higher than your monthly bank balance. That would be something that you'd want to investigate because that would be causing you bank rec issues also. And here's another example where hiring a visiting clerk can come in and they can come on site and they can help you get through these things. Carryover encumbrances. If you carry over encumbrances that are not required, you will permanently reduce the amount of resources available to appropriate in the new year. What do I mean by that? Well, if you carry over a PO or BC from this year into next year, and next year you don't spend the full amount of that PO or BC, then that money gets put in a reserve until year end and cannot be added to next year's budget and really can't be touched. What you want to do at year end is close out any POs and BCs that you no longer need or have a zero balance. And then if you know you're carrying something over from this year into next, decrease that purchase order or blanket certificate to exactly what you're going to pay in the new year for that, whatever it is that you're buying or paying for. Because you don't want to carry over more than is needed because it will be locked out of your budget for next year. It reserves that amount in the current year budget and will not allow you to add it to next year's budget by just closing that PO once you get into next year. So make sure you reduce those down and only carry over exactly what you need to pay for. You cannot change a carryover encumbrance once it's used in the new year during temporary mode or after the prior year is closed. If you're in temporary mode and you still have December of this year open and January of next year, and you make a payment in January of next year using a PO or BC, you can't reduce it down if you don't use the full amount. That's why we want you to reduce those ahead of time. Let's talk about year-end payroll encumbrances. How does the payroll encumbrance work? So the tax liability is always based on the post date of the wage. The post date of the wage should always reflect the payday. That's the day the paychecks are distributed or the EFT lands in the employee's bank account. State retirement, unlike taxes, is based on the pay period end date. So very different. State retirement's based on the last day of the pay period, while taxes are based on the actual post date of the wage. For example, a paycheck that's dated in early January could have a pay period with an end date of December, anything ending in December of the prior year. This is going to give you a classic example of January taxes due, but a December OPRS and OP&F payment. You're going to need to know that distinction because that's going to encumber that amount from the prior year's budget. Carryover encumbrance safety nets are built into the year-end process. You'll see it on the checklist here on the right. Several times during the year-end process, you're going to need to click to confirm that you recognize you are carrying over encumbrances. You must also acknowledge that you understand the consequences of carrying over the encumbrances. An error here is not reversible, so please, at all times, check that you're only carrying over the purchase orders or blanket certificates that you want to and that you need the exact amounts to spend next year, and you're only carrying over the withholdings encumbrances that are required. UAN provides you with a lot of year-end instructions. We're going to give you the best practices and the year-end procedures. In addition, we recommend you attend our in-person year-end training or the webinar training. Details on those will come out as the year gets closer to the end, but typically they take place in early December. Your year-end best practices is a list of steps in order that they should be performed. This acts as a high-level checklist. We absolutely recommend you print that out and check them off as you go. We even have the boxes to check. Then we have the year-end procedures. This is going to be your in-depth instructions for the software processes performed at year-end. From start to submission, it'll walk you through everything. It's going to be there to make sure you understand the requirements and how to use the UAN software to complete the process. So please give those a real look over. Closing a fiscal year takes place when all the financial transactions have been posted and reconciled with the bank, and the financial reporting requirements are completed, so you submit those online reports. Opening a fiscal year is when the calendar date moves to January 1st, and all new transactions must be posted in the new fiscal year. Temporary mode. Temporary mode gives you early access to New Year in December. So what's that mean is you can open up temporary mode and you can post when the calendar date's still in December. You could set up and post things for January as you're ready. You must install the year-end update before you can open temporary mode. And once installed, you must manually initiate the opening of temporary mode. It won't do it automatically. If you need help, you can give us a call, but it's included in the documents with temporary mode. When first opening temporary mode, you have one chance to edit the name of an existing payroll withholding. So basically that's just to correct a typo. If you have a payroll withholding that's been typed wrong all year and it's appeared that way, this is the only chance you have to correct that. If you don't have any payroll withholdings with a typo, you could skip that step and move right along. Another important note is temporary mode expires 60 days after year end. There are no exceptions and no extensions. Revenue budgets are estimated for a single year's worth of revenue. Revenue budgets do not include carryover cash balance for the fund. So it's only how much money you're expected to bring in a fiscal year. On budgetary reports, the UAN software combines the carryover cash, encumbrances, and other adjustments to fund balances with the revenue budget to show the full resources available for appropriations. On revenue reports, the UAN software compares the revenue budget, which is your final budget, with the year-to-date posted receipts or revenue to arrive at the balance you expect to receive before the end of the fiscal year, which is your budget balance. Be prepared to enter next year's revenue budget when temporary mode is opened. After revenue, obviously, comes your appropriations. Appropriations are the amount authorized by the governing board via legislation for spending within a fiscal year. Temporary appropriations are usually adopted in December to take effect come January 1st, so the government can operate until the permanent appropriations are adopted. Temporary appropriations expire by law on March 31st. You do not need to wait until March 31st to adopt permanent appropriations. Once the permanent appropriations are adopted, they replace the temporaries. So it's not in addition to the temporaries. Temporaries really just get you through that first quarter so the government can keep paying its bills, and the permanent completely wipes out the temporaries and takes over for the full year, January to December. Permanent appropriations must be adopted by the governing board each year, and permanent appropriations are for the entire year. Temporary appropriations can buy you more time in that first quarter while the government continues to function. The year-end balance certificate. The name on the actual form is the certificate of the total amount from all sources available for expenditures and balances. This gets filed after the fund balances and carryover encumbrance for the year are finalized. So you want to make sure everything is finalized before you file this form with your county auditor. What the form does is it notifies the county auditor of the exact year and unencumbered balance of each fund. This includes the carryover encumbrance, non-spendable balance, reserve balance accounts, and advances that were not repaid in the year. It also contains the estimated revenue for each fund from the official certificate. When this gets filed with the county auditor, it initiates the first amended official certificate of estimated resources, also known as the amended certificate. The official and amended certificates. The official certificate of estimated resources is issued by the county auditor and sets a maximum amount your governing board may adopt for appropriations for the upcoming year. Entities in a county that requires the filing of a tax budget for the upcoming year are issued the official certificate for the new year after the budget is filed and approved. The official certificate is based on the estimated year-end cash balance and estimated revenue by fund for the new year. The amended official certificate of estimated resources is produced when the year is fully closed, finalizing the cash balance and carryover encumbrance of each fund. These exact year-end fund balances and carryover encumbrances set the new maximum appropriations the board may adopt. Notes to the financial statement. All entities are required to file annual financial reports, and they must also complete notes to the financial statement. When you hear someone say Hinkle Notes, they mean the notes to your annual financial statement, AFR. The Auditor State's website provides notes templates for you to download and edit as needed. A training video for this is available on UAN link under the Training Year-End section. You could download that template, save it, and edit it. Right now, you could log in there and download last year's template, and you could start working on it. And when the new template does come out, it'll tell you on the very first page what's changed. So you could make those changes and save it again, and then you're good. Kind of gives you a head start if you want to download that and get working on it right away. E-services accounts. All Auditor State clients have access to an e-service account. This is important because in your e-services account, you can access your Auditor State invoices, but also review past Hinkle System AFR filings. So if you want to see how the notes were previously filed, this is where you could look on e-services. An important note, UAN support cannot offer technical assistance, but the e-services team can. So if you're locked out, feel free to give e-services a call and they can get you in there. That way you can review your IPA contract, past AFR filings, and state invoices. In conclusion, manage your POs and BCs throughout the year. Have your bank rec balances and all accounting and payroll errors resolved. Very important you stay on top of any changes in accounting and payroll. Get those resolved before you get close to year end. That way you know your budgets are good and your balances are good, and you don't want something else that you have to resolve just sticking out in December when you have a million things to do planning for next year and closing out this year. Install the year-end update and open temporary mode to gain access to the new year ASAP. So it should be available right around that year-end conference we host, and you'll want to get that installed. And once you're ready, open temporary mode, and you can access January in December to give yourself a head start. Prepare next year's revenue budget in advance to be prepared to enter it in temporary mode. So you don't want to wait until late December to have your revenue budget for the following year. You want to get that squared away ahead of time, so that way you can enter it in temporary mode and get rolling right into the new year. Have temporary appropriations adopted by your governing board by early December. That way you know you're funded for the first quarter of the new year if you're not ready to do the full year appropriations. And it's smooth sailing at year end right there. You enter in your revenue, then enter in your appropriation budgets. Be prepared to open new POs and BCs as soon as your appropriations are entered. You know you have reoccurring bills for utilities and things like that, things that you pay every year. Get those knocked out as fast as possible. It's easy stuff. Again, verify your access to the websites. You're going to need the Social Security Administration website. You're going to need your BSO number and you're going to make sure you have access to the Ohio Business Gateway to file your state forms. Review last year's year-end video on our website for more details we didn't cover here. Again, this is just a short pre-year-end video. We wanted to give you the things to get you lined up before December, so start working on those now. I thank you for hanging with me this long. Remember, you can always check out last year's year-end video before the conference to kind of give yourself a refresher. It's going to be the small things that you can take care of now that will make December's year-end a smooth process. If you have any questions, please contact us at UAN Support. You can email us at UAN_support@ohioauditor.gov or give us a call 800-833-8261.